This is Keys to the Shop, episode 468, How to Be a Shift Lead. Well, hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. Whether you're an owner, operator, or a manager, trainer, somebody who is aspiring to those things and just want to be a professional in the coffee shop space, this coffee podcast is for you. Over 800 episodes now, 7 years of content with some of the best minds in the business. You can find a lot of information over at keystotheshop.com, but best thing for you to do is subscribe to the show. Hit subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast. And if you love what Keys to the Shop has done and it has offered value to you, then definitely send a 5-star rating or review our way over at Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. That would be amazing. So thank you so much, everyone, for doing that. Now, are you a coffee shop owner who wants to create an excellent and thriving, profitable cafe? Keys to the Shop Consulting delivers clarity, solutions, and foundations for long-term success across all areas of your business. You know, when you look at the landscape of available help in the coffee industry, one of the most important things to me is that your cafe is specific and unique, and we can't just apply just general principles right away. There's a lot of listening and conversation to apply specific solutions and tools and insights that will help those timeless principles of good business actually stick. And that's the benefit of working with Keys to the Shop Consulting. So send an email to chris@keystotheshop.com to set up a free discovery call. Well, let's have a conversation about what's going on in your coffee shop. If there are challenges and problems that need solutions and clarity for next steps, or there are opportunities for growth where you really want to make sure that you are making great decisions for the business and for your people, there are a lot of ways that we can help, and I would love to talk with you about that. So go ahead and email chris@keystotheshop.com. Also, if you follow on Instagram @keystotheshop, simply send a direct message and let's chat. Hiring a consultant or a coach does not have to be an intimidating process. It truly is a conversation, and there's a lot of ways that we can work together to help you build and continue to build something beautiful. chris@keystotheshop.com. I love coffee, and I think that's obviously something that we'd all think is our main, driver in this industry. We love people, we love coffee, and one of the things that we have to do to provide for our customers, first and foremost, is provide them good coffee. That's why I love the Ground Control brewer over at groundcontrol.coffee. Go there and learn more about this amazing brewer, this SCA award-winning technology that allows not only game-changing batch brew coffee with a range of possible expressions that is unrivaled in any other technology, but also it's an all-in-one machine that allows you to make batched iced lattes, batched cold brew. The new brewer is actually smaller than the original Cyclops brewer and boasts a 30% higher output of both cold brew and batched espresso concentrate. So there's a lot of ways this machine is being used to create more profitability, efficiency, and quality upgrades in the cafe. Go to groundcontrol.coffee to learn more again. And definitely, if you're looking for the next level for quality in your coffee shop, then I think you really need to check out the Ground Control brewer. Now, one of the keys to the shop, I think, is consistency, right? Being able to provide your customers with something that they can rely on time after time. And when it comes to plant-based beverages, that is 100% something that we need to be focused on. And sometimes it is where we fall the farthest down. When you work with great products, it helps you level things up and off, So working with the Barista series from Pacific is a great decision simply for that reason. But also, the Barista series is created for baristas, designed for baristas and tested by some of the greatest professionals in the world before the product actually reaches your shelf. So it stands up to the heat from steaming, provides awesome texture for latte art, also keeps the taste balance focused on the coffee. There's so much to love here, and I would definitely encourage you to check out pacificfoodservice.com and get samples. Best way to do this is to try it in your cafe. Try it for yourself. Have your baristas use it. Make a bevy of drinks. And I think you're really going to be impressed by this. Again, pacificfoodservice.com. If you're looking for the best plant-based beverages for your cafe, then I think you need to check out the Barista series from Pacific. Okay, everyone. Well, today we are going to be talking about shift leads. And this is a conversation that we are having because I have had this conversation so many times over the years with clients, and I have seen this across various types of coffee shops where the shift lead position is put into place often without a lot of thought as to what exactly that person does, and is usually the first place where we experience what we on the show have called leadership abandonment syndrome, where we assign a certain level or title that creates an expectation that the person giving the title has yet to even explore following through on and resourcing. And the title of today's episode is called How to Be a Shift Lead. And so, yes, we are going to talk about if you are a shift lead, what to do and how to do it and that kind of thing. But also, obviously, the audience of Keys to the Shop is made up of people who might be in charge of actually determining, do you need a shift lead on your shift? And so we're going to start by talking to the people who have the most authority in the business to make or break the position itself. And that is owners, that is managers, whoever you are, you have authority to give authority to people. And so that's obviously where we need to start. So let's begin by asking the question, what is a shift lead and do you need one? Which is a great question. More often than not, I would say if you're at the level where you believe that present leadership in your cafe is absolutely necessary because of how busy it is, you would be served more by having a cafe manager that is on a track for increased pay over time and added responsibility than you would a lead barista or a shift lead. So basically, lead barista, shift lead, these things can be interchangeable and often are interchangeable, but the hierarchy, if you will, of these positions, shift lead tends to be the lower, and lead barista tends to be a little bit between manager and shift lead. And finally, a full-fledged manager is the last step, so the final boss, if you will, underneath the potentially the GM or the owner of the cafe. And the reason why people consider these positions as necessary is they want to give a barista somewhere to go besides being a barista, which I can completely understand. However, fabricating positions without substance is futile. If the position is not necessary for your business, eventually all that person is going to realize, hey, all I have is a title. And you're going to say to yourself, why am I paying this person more to do hardly anything more, really? The position needs to be a needed thing in the cafe. And so the idea of having a shift lead is a good one, I think. It's not born from this desire to try to create futility in the cafe. You want to give people more responsibility, and of course, you should pay them more for that responsibility. But what I find often is that we don't think through the job description for what a barista is doing in that shift lead position. We think of shift lead as something that will maybe eventually become a manager. I think it's a great way to think about it, in that you have a group of people, especially if you're just starting out, that you're really just getting to know. And the leadership capacity of the individual can sometimes be explored by giving them more responsibility to show how they handle that added responsibility. As always, you have to resource them very well for this position, not only paying them more for more work, but also paying them the time and resource and energy that that role needs in communication, tools and clarity, etc. It's not enough just to say, hey, be a lead barista and then figure it out on your own. And then when they fail, you're just saying, oh, well, I guess they weren't the right person for the job. That more so, I think that could be said of yourself in those circumstances where you fail to provide the basic foundations for role success in the cafe, and you use that as sort of a judgment, a framework to say, oh, well, that person didn't work out, so therefore they were the wrong fit. We got to look at ourselves first, okay? So be the agent of clarity and resourcing. That's what we talk about on the show. and you need to make sure that you're giving them the best possible chance of success. And putting them in a position of leadership is going to be kind of a tumultuous situation, because anybody who has authority in the shift has authority at the peril of their social life in a lot of cases, which means they are going to be some kind of a boss in some way. They are going to lead. They are going to lead the shift. They are going to be a lead barista, which might mean that they have authority to create standards or manage standards in the cafe in a way that a trainer might. Lead barista and trainer can sometimes be interchangeable depending on how big your business is. But when you establish a shift lead, the shift lead position has to be one of authority and ability to lead the actual shift. So this person needs to be somebody who demonstrates capability in all areas of the business. They have the ability to work all stations very well to your satisfaction. Not only that, but maybe even higher than that. But at least that they know the POS, the back bar, the espresso. They can take care of the bathrooms well. They can do all the jobs. They are a person who will be seen as the standard. As soon as you put authority in that person's hands, everybody else will say, this is the standard. They are the leader, and ergo, if I do something similar to what they do, I should be doing fine. And so if you put a shift lead in place, that's the kind of person that you want to have in that position. But more than their capability, technically, they have to demonstrate a capability of self-leadership and the ability to direct people. So directing your own work is one thing, but directing people is quite a different skill. People are put into a shift lead position often without regard for whether or not they are going to be assertive. And being assertive actually is a quality a leader needs to have. Now, being assertive is not the same as being aggressive or bossy, quote unquote. There's a difference between being a boss and being bossy. It's somebody who views their position as a necessary service to others for their well-being and for the care of the cafe. So the people, the space, the product, all of those things are in the shift lead's hands. So they're demonstrating that they understand that at this moment in time, I am the person who will help coordinate what happens in this cafe on this shift, this particular shift, which might as well be the whole cafe. It's just a little slice of the life of the coffee shop that day. And for most of us, that's virtually only two different slices of the day. The shift lead is somebody who needs to have those qualities. So to answer this question of, do we need a shift lead in the cafe? There's a couple of reasons you would put a shift lead in position. One is because you yourself are needed in other areas of the business that don't allow you to be there as a leader, and you need to delegate leadership. However, you might not be able to afford to have a full-fledged manager in the cafe, and in that case, you might want to establish some level of leadership via an enhanced position, which is the shift lead. And that position, by the way, does not need to necessarily continue on forever and ever. You have the right to dissolve a role in your business if it no longer fits your business. I'm of the opinion, and we have an episode around this, leaner teams is the title. I forget the rest of it, but it's leaner teams, better results, I think. We need to be thinking about the barista's role as something that is professionalized within our business. More responsibility, more pay, more focus, more resourcing, more development, fewer people equals better results, in my opinion. By continuing to just establish and never sunset roles such as the shift lead, when you end up with a full-fledged manager, all of a sudden the shift lead position starts to become less effective, because now that you have an in-store manager who works on the bar 20 some odd hours a week and the rest of their time is spent in admin, in development and training, etc., that shift lead position becomes somewhat of a redundancy. Instead, you could actually dissolve that role and enhance the role of the barista to a higher level of professional expectation and higher level of reward, and you'd be better off, I think. Now, there is something to say about people loving titles. I get it. I think people love being valued more than they love titles themselves. So if you were a barista, and if you just create internal language around levels of barista, that might be helpful. But the barista role has the ability to satisfy the professional longings of coffee people all over, depending on what ownership is doing in terms of communicating their desire to make it a professional role, and to say, we want to reward you for the work that you do. So don't be afraid if you end up in this place where you have, and I've seen this many times, where people have like 6 or 7 shift leads, and then they have a manager, and then there's a GM, and there's all these management layers. A lot of these layers are redundancies, and creating a minimum viable system of leadership is going to be a lot better than having lots of different managers. I will say that it's a big red flag to me when I see multiple titles like that, because the chances of that person within a larger crowd of people who have titles of authority within a business, there's a better chance that a lot of those people are not suited for that role, and that those roles were just established somewhere early on and they just needed to be continued. So we kind of put people in that place without regard to whether they were a good fit for leadership. Leadership's not an easy role to fulfill. And so we need to be suspicious of the idea that you can just have like so many shift leads and so many assistants and management layers and leadership layers, because you have to manage your managers. You have to lead them. And then at that point, you're not actually leading the business anymore. You're simply trying to keep the train from going off the tracks. So the shift lead position might be something that you start out with in the beginning and eventually consolidate those roles into a management position. And as you get bigger and the manager has to take on more if the business requires it, you might bring a shift lead position back, or you might bring an assistant manager role into play. But the fact is that a barista that is worth their salt will be a leader in their own right. We always talk about the idea that you should hire baristas with the mindset that I want to hire people who can be managers, who already demonstrate the character traits of somebody who's going to be responsible not just for themselves, but for others. And in so doing, you also end up with a deeper bench to choose from in those roles as they come up and as they're needed. But also the barista culture itself will become more accountable to itself and not have to be dragged along and or inspired all the time and motivated all the time. They are people who demonstrate character traits of leadership already. And so half of the stuff that I hear shift leads doing, I'm like, well, that's actually something a barista should be doing. There's no taking inventory and or just being responsible for keeping quality standards up and that kind of thing. A regular barista should be responsible for those types of things, and many are, which is why shift leads sometimes feel like I don't even know what I'm supposed to be doing, because everyone here is so capable. It's just that it falls on me to sort of guarantee that these things are getting done. And so a shift lead position is something that I think should be less based on the basic skills of barista work and more based on, one, a leadership position that allows for a certain amount of coordination during the shift and a big picture view and the ability to see the big picture and also zoom in to the details of the shift, as well as maybe a couple of specialized tasks during that shift that you invest into training them for. A shift lead cannot be somebody who is making up for the poor hiring decisions that you make by constantly having to chase down people to finish tasks and checklists and things like that. It is not helpful. You really do need to hire better. You need to find the right fit for your business as somebody who is going to be a professional barista, be good at their job on their own volition. And if your shift lead's position is to constantly chase people down and get them to do their work, that is not a great role to have in the cafe. And that's why people don't sometimes want that role, because they feel like they're just like, they're the cops. you know? They have to constantly be policing the shift. Well, you wouldn't be in that position to begin with if you were investing into hiring the right people and investing the right things into those people, in resourcing them well in their responsibilities. That makes the shift lead's position of, policing things irrelevant. Now, that's not to say that people won't need reminders or leadership is irrelevant because people know what they're supposed to do. There is a certain sense of clarity that a leader needs to bring. And that's where I think a shift lead can shine. And so if you are in this place where you think you want to put a shift lead in place, consider what I've just said here in this preamble. Consider whether this is a good role for your business based on, am I putting this in place because I need the poor hires that I established to be constantly policed into doing what I want, and I'm just going to put a shift lead in place to absorb the tension of forcing a ill-fit crew to do the things that I want them to do? Well, then don't put a shift lead in that position. Don't make them do that. Own your part to play in creating a situation that now needs to be managed through better hiring practices. You can use turnover to your advantage by hiring better when roles come up again and people leave. Or you might need to actually start some disciplinary action with people that you're trying to avoid by putting managers in place to get your distance away from what is a needed decision, to have some disciplinary action, basically some restorative direct conversations that may end up leading to better performance, and it may end up leading to letting the person go. That might be just what needs to happen. Don't use the delegation of authority in your business as a way to cover up your being ineffective as a leader in the business. So now let's talk about being a shift lead. And as a owner who is then responsible for this person's performance as a shift lead, you need to get clear on what their role is. There might be some specialized area of skill that they need to do. It might be deeper levels of the inventory itself. It might be something related to money handling that the shift lead is responsible for doing the drawer at the end of every shift, for example. And those are great specialized tasks that you can put in their hands. One of the things that they need to be in charge of is coordinating breaks and coordinating stations and making sure that everyone has what they need and paying attention to the feel of the shift itself. And as a leader, one of the things that you're doing is you're not just leading the business, you're leading people. So if you notice that somebody is having a very hard time at the POS, that they are just struggling, but they don't know how to ask for help, you as a shift lead could have the responsibility and the authority to say, hey, let's switch shifts, or ask how they're doing, and just really be empathetic and sensitive to how the dynamics of that day are going, not only behind the bar, but including on the other side of the bar. You're paying attention again to the big picture. How is this shift and this experience going for all the people involved? And what do I need to do with my position as a shift lead to move things around, to coordinate time and space and resources to make it go as smoothly and as effective as possible? To me, that's what a leader does. And when you say shift lead, that's what the lead does, is that they are a director, a coordinator. And there are some things that need to be established as expectations of this role that I think are going to make it an effective role. So the first thing is, as a shift lead, and no matter what you call this position, okay, let's call it an intermediary position between, barista and manager, if it's an enhanced barista role of some kind. And this could apply to a manager as well, by the way. First thing is that you're training through example and delegation. So you are an example to people in your presence. As soon as authority happens, it is automatic that people will look to you as an example. And so as you work, you have to be aware of, how am I working right now? You can accept this position or you cannot accept this position. Nobody is going to force you to take this position of shift lead. If you feel forced into it, look for another place to work. And I don't mean to sound blithe about this, but this is a mutual, yes, I want to do this role. When you say yes, let your yes be yes, and accept the fact that now there is somewhat of a rift between yourself and other people. That's a huge part of this, where you used to be a part of the team, and you still are a part of the team, but now there is this warp that happens in the way people view you. Leaders know this. Owners know this especially. As soon as you get any kind of authority, you are seen as someone who is both an example and a scapegoat. And so you have to approach this from the perspective of, I am down for that, because I'm going to overcome that inertia, that distrust that people generally have of authority, by proving myself as somebody who is an asset to them, as a servant to them in a way, for the effectiveness of their shift, that I am there as a conduit for clarity. And my example and the way I work and the way I help, I am the chief helper in a lot of ways. I am somebody who on this shift will stay aware, and in that awareness, I will be called into action to help in the places that I see need the most help, according to what I know is the standard. And that brings us to the idea of, you being someone who understands the standard is dependent on you being up to date and informed. You have to be informed about what's going on, how things work, why this is happening, what the standard is for all the areas of the cafe individually and collectively as they work together. And you can't be an effective shift lead or manager or lead barista if you don't know those things. And it's easy, very easy, by the way, to live in this place of isolation where you're surprised by things all the time. Now, I understand the boss should have told you, or that it would have been easier if XYZ happened. Well, we are all in charge of our own selves, and you need to get what you need to be successful in this role. Fact is that not all owners and managers are going to give you the tools and clarity and resources you need for this job. And so you need to get it for yourself. And speak to owners and managers right now, say, look, don't make that necessary for them. But sometimes it is necessary. And sometimes it's actually very helpful because there's so much going on and the manager is just trying to juggle all they're trying to juggle. By making sure and getting clear on your expectations, you're actually helping them. And it's kind of a mutual thing. It doesn't have to be something out of spite. We don't have to live on spite in coffee. We can lead ourselves and say, you know what, even though I know that technically this was some, information that I should have been given ahead of time by somebody else, and I had to go get it for myself, that's going to render something good in me later on for when maybe I'm a higher level of leadership. Maybe I'll own my own coffee shop and I will provide that for someone else. But my ability to go and get it also will help me as a professional develop a certain resiliency and resourcefulness that will stay with me my entire career. So you need to be up to date and informed. And part of the role might simply be that you do that yourself as a part of why you are in that position. So staying up to date with different posts made on Slack or 7shifts or Schedulefly or whatever you use, asking questions, building into your day a certain structure that allows you to stay up to date and informed about standards as they come up. And so when people ask you questions on shift about things that are happening in the cafe, you actually have an answer for them. Journaling is such a great idea. Going in with intention is such a great idea. And if you're a shift lead, this is a place where you get to exercise a lot of self-leadership in the way you lead others and take that responsibility seriously. One of the things that you also have to do as a shift lead is coordinate. And you can't coordinate a shift, you can't stay aware of what's going on throughout the cafe and the different positions if you are buried in one corner doing something like pour overs and you're just staring at a V60 the whole time. You have no idea what's going on with the register, with the cafe, the patio, the bathroom, the back bar, sandwiches, anything. You don't know what's going on there because you are stuck in that one position. You need to be in a high visibility position. And at the very least, if you do have to put yourself in a position that's a little bit more isolated on the bar, which could be helped by making sure the shift lead position is something that has flexibility in it, that you're at least looking around and taking as part of the role, not just to make that station work, but that you are head up, paying attention. And if you need to go help somebody with something, you see a guest has a question or barista is burning out over at the sandwich station, or they're like dangerously low on something over at this other station, then you know that that's happening. And part of your role is to address it as quickly as possible. We say that a barista should have at least 3 things to do after they're done doing what they're doing now. A shift lead has that same mentality, except they are the ones who have the ability to move things in a certain direction based on how they see that shift going. And so if you are that person, make sure that you are not just defaulting to your comfort zone. When you take on a leadership position like this, I think it's necessary for you to lean into places where you might feel slightly uncomfortable. You'll never give yourself permission, especially under duress of the pressure of the shift, to expand beyond your comfort zone. So for some of you, that might mean hiding on the bar making espresso. For some of you, it might mean I'm going to take on the dishes. Now, that's like the ultimate, we call that disappearing, where you just like, where's the shift lead? Oh, they're being a servant leader by doing the dishes. Guess what? That's not really what's happening a lot of times. A lot of times it's just hiding. So we have to make sure that we're being honest with ourselves about our motives. And if you feel ill-equipped, then go to your boss, go to your manager and talk to them about it. Talk to them about what can we do, because I really want to lead the shift, and I think it would be helpful if I was here or there, or maybe it's even a floating position that is more of a bar back, which is ideal for a shift lead, honestly. A shift lead position is something that if you're going to establish it, then it needs to be somebody who operates more as like a coordinating bar back that serves all the positions, but also has the ability to manage those positions. And that will give you the ability to help others. Now, if you are in this place of executing on a shift lead position and coordinating the shift, being available, strategically placing yourself in the day, and you do this successfully, you're going to have a lot of great information to also share with management that will help make the entire business better. Because it's not just executing the tasks, it's also assessing the effectiveness of the shift. If you're a boss that puts a shift lead position in, you have got to make sure that that person is not only equipped by you as much as possible, but that they are given the ability to give you feedback about how shifts are going. Why would you put somebody in a position of management at any level and simply not ask them how the shifts are going and what can be improved? They will tell you. I mean, baristas will already tell you, but even more so somebody who is fine-tuning their attention and energy onto the way that everything works together for their own sake and for the sake of the business. They're going to want to tell you how things can be improved in the cafe. Now, I will tell you this, one thing that a shift lead is not. They are not the manager of the cafe. And a manager of a cafe is somebody who has, in my opinion, the ability to hire and fire and perform a coaching role that is a lot more consequential, okay? And if you put somebody in a position where it feels like all they're doing is telling on their fellow employees, that's unfair to them. You can't be so distant that you don't see the issues yourself and then put them in the awkward position of having to, sometimes take on this managerial authority to determine the course of their coworkers' career and position. That's not what a shift lead position, in my opinion, is about. If you want them to have that kind of authority, that needs a lot more compensation. It needs a lot more investment in training, simply because there's more responsibility. And, a shift lead is not going to have a one-on-one with a barista. A manager does that, or you will do that as the de facto manager. A shift lead is simply somebody who has a specialized set of responsibilities to coordinate, set an example, and serve the fluidity of the shift itself. And people see them as a reminder of the standards in hospitality, workflow, and quality throughout the day. But I don't think you should expect them to have to deal with behavioral issues that happen on shift. That's going to end up being your responsibility or somebody with a higher level of delegated authority as a manager. So this is not like a cheap and easy way for you to get a manager without paying for it. because what will happen is they will recognize the tension of the situation and they just will not do that. And so I wanted to put that caveat out there for you with a shift lead position. Don't expect manager or GM level responsibility from a shift lead position. That's a whole nother thing. And it's something that you are responsible for. You are the one who should still be in touch with what's going on in the cafe. You should be having one-on-ones with your staff on a regular basis. If not weekly, then bi-weekly. And if you can't, then maybe you do need a manager. Maybe you need somebody who is there, not just as somebody who is checking a list. This is not somebody who is simply managing. Never been a fan of the idea that management is so separate from leadership. To be a great manager, you need to be a leader. And to be a great leader, you need to have the ability to manage. They're basically the same thing. Two sides of the same coin, if you will, if we can have any separation between the two of them. But maybe you need a manager for that kind of thing. So I hope that this episode has touched on some important parts of a shift lead position that will help you create more clarity and resourcing and effectiveness of the role in your cafe if you need this role at all. Always question, is this role being built for the business or is it being built for the person? You don't want to build roles for people specifically and then try to force it into the business that can't sustain it, because that it just brings heartache. It really does. And if you do need this shift lead position, keep it as small in number as possible with as high of an investment as possible into the individual, both monetarily and with energy of resource across the board, and let that person thrive in their role, but keep it specific to coordinating the shift, reinforcing standards of work during the shift, and then when you realize you need more present authority and leadership that's of a deeper nature, now you need to start thinking about management and leadership through management singularly over the cafe. One manager per cafe is plenty. And we have too many managers as a shift break. You could listen to that as well. We'll link that in the show notes. But that is what I wanted to talk to you about today. Let's make these roles effective. Let's think before we establish. And if you are in this role, get what you need to be successful. Lead yourself in this thing as you lead people, and watch your career blossom and watch your capacity grow. Every leader, no matter the position, is on a quest to build trust through being decisive, assertive, and managing themselves and leading themselves. So I hope that this has been helpful. And if you have any questions about this, if you are interested in working with Keys to the Shop Consulting and want to work through some of these issues in your own cafe, I'd be happy to talk with you. Let's have a free discovery call and see what we can work out and how Keys to the Shop Consulting can help you. Again, that's chris@keys-to-the-shop.com. And with that, that is the end of our episode. So I'm really excited because this week I'm going to be going to the expo in Chicago. So I'll be seeing many of you there. And it's going to be a good time. Lots of coffee, too little protein. It's what good times are made of. So thank you very much, everyone. And as always, I hope that this episode has truly given you keys to the shop.